In this part, I will discuss the modeling of hysteretic behavior, because you have seen in the definition of nonlinear material properties also that not only you have to provide a monotonic stress strain curve or action deformation relationship. In general, I will say action deformation, but for fiber modeling, it will become stress strain curve. So not only you have to provide the monotonic behavior, but also the unloading and reloading rule, or the complete cyclic behavior actually. So this cyclic behavior is also sometimes called as the hysteretic behavior. So this phenomena is not only associated with stress strain curve, but any action deformation curve will have a cyclic behavior. If you want to define the moment rotation behavior, to define the flexural nonlinearity at directly member level using plastic hinge approach, even then you have to actually tell or provide the hysteretic behavior for this action deformation curve. So it's a general phenomena, but it is also applicable to our fiber modeling, because we will be actually defining the cyclic stress strain curve for our materials. So in this part, I will quickly discuss that what is this hysteretic behavior, what are our options available to model this behavior in our computer programs, and then if you talk about ETABS, what are some of the built-in options available for modeling cyclic behavior or hysteretic behavior. So the very first option for modeling the hysteretic behavior in our inelastic components is called the explicit modeling approach. And as we have discussed in the last session, the last class, that there are two types of cyclic degradation. One is the cyclic degradation and other is the in-cycle degradation. One is the degradation of stiffness and strength between different cycles, and the other is within one cycle you may have degradation in stiffness or strength. So in option 1, you explicitly model these types of degradation. How? What you do is that you use an initial backbone curve as a reference boundary surface. So you provide an initial backbone curve, monotonic curve, which is shown here with the dotted line, this one. And then the backbone curve hardens or softens as a function of damage. So this curve, depending upon how much damage you actually experience, goes down or goes up, whatever is the behavior of a particular action deformation curve. So you need to have a set of rules to define how the degradation will occur and on what parameters this degradation will depend. So you have to explicitly tell the program, if you can actually do it. Later I will tell you that this option is not available in commercial programs. Actually, if you could do it, what you have to do is that you have to modify your stress strain behavior at each time instant. So you start with one curve, and as soon as you get a damage and you have to unload, follow a new curve, and then follow another curve and follow another curve depending upon damage. So you keep on modifying the actual stress strain curve at each time instant, and therefore you capture all the cyclic behavior. So you start with an initial monotonic backbone curve, and after certain cycles you end up on a degraded curve. After certain cycles you will see that you will be not following the initial backbone curve, but following a degraded curve. But this explicit consideration of cyclic behavior is not available in commercial software packages, but it is available in some of the research-based programs like OpenSeas or some other programs like that. So you can explicitly consider cyclic behavior. So when you are doing it, actually you are modifying your stress strain curve at each instant, each load step, you are modifying your curve and you are actually capturing the full cyclic behavior. So this is first option, explicit approach. But second is a simplified approach, and it is that you actually account the effect of degradation directly in the modified backbone curve, whatever backbone you give, you already account for the cyclic degradation in that, and then just define an unloading and reloading rule, and every time the unloading and reloading directly goes to the same backbone, and in between the backbone on positive and negative sides you will have unloading and reloading cycles. So the effect of degradation is already accounted by modifying the backbone curve. So this is a practical approach. So you use a cyclic envelope or skeleton curve as a modified initial backbone curve. So the ductility degradation and cyclic strength degradation, whatever are the cyclic phenomena, they are already incorporated in the modified backbone. Hysteretic loops will be anchored to backbone. So whenever there is unloading and reloading, it will hit the modified backbone and then unload. So you are not actually modifying the actual stress strain curve at each instant. You are simply defining a boundary on both positive and negative sides and unloading and reloading rules between that boundary. So that modified backbone curve serve as a boundary in between which the loading cycles are applied. So you need a set of rules to define how loops will form and how much energy will be dissipated by that component. So obviously the area under these loops is a measure of the dissipated energy. Dissipated energy. So if the area is more, the material is expected to dissipate more energy and maybe provide more damping to your structure. So here, for example, in this case, you have the same backbone curve, the solid black line, and all the cycles, they are just anchored to that solid black line. They will just join that solid black line, and you have non-degraded and degraded loops. Both will actually go to the same backbone. So you are not actually cycle by cycle modifying your stress strain curve. Your basic backbone remains the same because it has already incorporated the effect implicitly, the effect of cyclic degradation and ductility degradation. So the loop after strength loss probably has large deformation. So although the stiffness have significantly degraded, but the loop is all still anchored to the initial backbone. The loading and unloading is still from one solid black line to the other solid black line. This is option 2, and if you are using ASC 41 modeling parameters and acceptance criteria, you are essentially using this option 2, because whatever low action deformation behavior ASC 41 provides, it already accounts these effects uh, because the envelope which uh, is provided in ASC 41 fit to the cyclic test data. So the ASC 41 provides us the action deformation curves which are already modified to account for cyclic behavior. So you are actually using option 2 if you are going for this action deformation curve from ASC 41. So ASC 41 originally envisioned for static pushover analysis without any cyclic deformation in the analysis. But ASC 41 is still reasonable for most commercial analysis programs that cannot simulate cyclic degradation of the backbone curve. So commercial programs cannot explicitly consider cyclic degradation of the backbone. So for them, the use of ASC 41 approach is reasonable, and ASC 41 provides the action deformation curve in this form. So for example, on y-axis is the action Q normalized by the yield quantity of that action. For example, moment divided by my. And on x-axis you have the deformation parameter, rotation or any deformation. And it provides you this curve defined by A, B, C, D and E. And obviously B point corresponds to the yield point, so this ratio will be 1. These parameters small a, small b and small c, their values are given for beams, columns, shear walls and everything. So if you are given with small a, small b and small c, you can construct this curve for any element, any RC element, and then you can use that as input in as your action deformation curve. However, ASC 41 doesn't provide you the action deformation curve at material level. It provides you directly at member level. So it is used with plastic hinge modeling approach and not with the fiber modeling approach. So it provides you the action deformation at member level and compatible with the plastic hinge modeling approach. So you will not get these A, B and C as strains of the material, but rotation of a particular beam or column, because the primary flexural nonlinear action deformation curve is moment versus rotation. So you can get small a, small b, small c rotations because they are rotation values on x-axis, and also the IO, LS and CP for in terms of the rotation values. These IO, let's say LS and CP markers, you will get them from ASC 41. And this is just one example. These 6 values you can obtain for columns, for shear walls and for some other components also from ASC 41. And obviously you can guess by now that these modeling parameters, because this action deformation curve is representing the capacity of your beam or column. So it must be a function of the cross-sectional geometry, amount of reinforcement and all material properties, for example. So it means that there are detailed tables in your document ASC 41, and in order to get A, B and C, IO, LS and CP for a particular beam or column, you have to go into those tables and put your cross-sectional properties and material properties and reinforcement details, everything, amount of steel for example, and finally you get the capacity values, and then using that you can construct this curve and give as an input for capacity. So this we will discuss more when we will be discussing the plastic hinge modeling approach. So in ETABS or in Perform 3D, you have to account for the effect of cyclic degradation by using an energy degradation factor. So, or also sometimes called as the energy ratio. So it is the ratio of degraded loop after few cycles divided by non-degraded area. So after certain cycles, you know that the loop will get degraded and the area under the curve, area under the degraded loop will reduce. So dotted line here is representing a non-degraded loop, and after few cycles of the forced deformation, the solid line is representing degraded loop. So you can see that non-degraded loop have more area. So it means that area of degraded divided by non-degraded will be less than 1. This ratio is less than 1. So that ratio is actually called the energy ratio or energy degradation factor. That factor have to be given as an input also if you want to go for this degradation, if you want to account for that cyclic degradation in your material stress strain curve or any action deformation curve. So in general, this ratio of the areas, the energy ratio, will be 1 obviously before yield. Before yield, the degraded and undegraded loops will be same. But after yield, it will reduce from 1 and it will go maybe up to 0.3 or 0.4 also after near the uh, completion of the stress strain curve or any action deformation curve. So you have to provide this factor also at least at 1 or 2 points so that the program accounts for the cyclic degradation implicitly. It cannot do it explicitly, but it can do it using this ratio or energy degradation factor. So here for example you can see that the blue line is the test results, lateral load versus lateral deformation of a particular element, and red line is the shear hinge model or the nonlinear action deformation curve which is given to model that nonlinearity in the computer model. So now you can see that the action deformation curve which is shown by the red line is actually capturing the cyclic degradation also by actually reducing the stiffness for each of the loading and unloading new loop. But every time the new loop is there, it anchors to the same backbone. So this is the same backbone line, and every time the new loop is there, and it directly goes to the same backbone and comes back. So the target is to capture the test results as much as possible. So ASC 41 helps us if you talk about the plastic hinge modeling approach in this case. But if you are going for fiber modeling approach, then you can go for uh, accounting the degradation uh, using the energy degradation factor, and there are certain hysteretic behavior which are available or models which are available by default in ETABS, and you can select a suitable hysteretic behavior and assign it to your backbone. Hysteretic behavior in ETABS is simply a set of rules that how the stress or action should unload, how it should reload, with what stiffness it should reload and unload. These rules are defined by the hysteretic model which you will assign to a particular action deformation curve. In our case, it will be stress strain curve. So if you are talking about ETABS, it has these several of these hysteretic behavior which are default hysteretic models. Hysteresis is a process of energy dissipation through deformation. So whenever an element yields or cracks or crushes a particular nonlinear component, it dissipates energy. It basically dissipates the energy of the applied loading. So the process is called hysteresis, and it is captured or shown by the hysteretic behavior. Hysteresis is opposed to viscosity, which is the same energy degradation or energy dissipation through deformation rate or velocity. So the energy dissipation through velocity is basically viscosity, but energy dissipation through deformation is hysteresis. Hysteresis is typical for solids, whereas viscosity is typical for fluids, although this distinction is not that rigid. So several hysteresis models are available to define nonlinear stress strain behavior. In fact, they are there for any nonlinear action deformation curve, not only stress strain behavior. Whenever loading is reversed, action is reversed, uh, it will unload based on these one of these rules which you have selected and assigned to that backbone curve. For the most part, these models differ in the amount of energy they dissipate in a given cycle of deformation. So in next few slides, I will quickly introduce these hysteretic behavior, but you will see that their shapes are different, and in fact, the area under these loops are different, and therefore the amount of energy they dissipate in a particular cycle is different. So let's quickly see these hysteretic models, how they look like, what are their loading and unloading rules. They are used for material stress strain behavior while using them in the fiber modeling approach. Obviously, the hysteretic rule which you will assign to a particular stress strain behavior, it will affect the behavior of that particular fiber to which that stress strain behavior is assigned, and also it will affect the behavior of that layered shell element to which that particular stress strain layer is assigned. And then single degree of freedom behavior also, which are frame hinges. For example, you can modify a particular flexural action using plastic hinge approach by giving us an moment versus rotation relationship. And then if you give that action deformation curve, you have to also select a hysteretic model which will be one of those same hysteretic models which I have shown. So similarly, some other kinds of hinges, if you want to define, you have to give the hysteretic model also along with the monotonic backbone curve. And another use of these hysteretic models is in the nonlinear link or support elements, which have multilinear plasticity kinds of spring elements or link elements. you can assign the hysteretic behavior. Whenever you define a nonlinear action deformation curve as an input, you have to assign also an hysteretic behavior also in addition to backbone curve. So currently we will be discussing only for in the context of fiber modeling, but the same hysteresis model are also applicable to plastic hinge modeling also. So backbone curve means that a uniaxial action and deformation curve. So as I have shown earlier also that for material stress strain these can be used. For hinges or nonlinear link elements, there whenever there is an action deformation curve defined, you have to give the hysteresis rule also. So you have to give a set of points to define the uniaxial curve, which is called the backbone curve. Now from that backbone curve, how a particular loading or action should unload or reload. This is different in each of these hysteretic behaviors. For example, the very first one is called the elastic hysteresis model. If I go back and show you that list again, it has elastic, kinematic, Takeda model, pivot model, concrete model, BRB hardening, degrading model and isotropic model. So each one of them is suitable for a particular uh, nonlinear component. Some can be used for unreinforced concrete stress strain behavior. Some can be used for plastic hinge of a reinforced concrete beam, for example. So each of the hysteretic type is suitable for a different application. The very first one is elastic hysteresis model. It, as the name indicates, that it has a nonlinear behavior, but it unloads on the same line, nonlinear line. So it shows the elastic behavior, although the relationship between action and deformation is nonlinear. So it means no energy dissipation. It follows the same line while loading and unloading. Okay, so this is hysteretic behavior with no area under the loop, no energy dissipated because of yielding. Kinematic hysteresis model, and it is the default hysteresis model for all metal materials, and it dissipates a significant amount of energy. It yields, and then it is composed of two lines, bilinear kind of a hysteresis model with a very large area under the loop. No additional parameter is required for this model, because later if you see that if you select certain hysteresis model, you have to give certain input values also for those models. Upon unloading and reverse loading, the curve follows a path made of segments parallel to and from the same length as the previously loaded segments and their opposite direction counterparts until it rejoins the backbone curve when loading in the opposite direction. So it unloads with the same stiffness and yields in the other direction, and every time it joins the same backbone. So there is a backbone which you have given in both directions, and the loops, although they will yield at certain points, but they will still be joining the same backbone. So this is suitable for metals. It is appropriate for ductile materials, for example steel also. Degrading hysteresis model, as the name indicates, that it degrades the stiffness also with different loops. In the kinematic model, there is no stiffness degradation. But here, the model is similar to kinematic, but it uses a degrading hysteretic loop that accounts for decreasing energy dissipation. As I have said earlier, that whenever there is cyclic degradation, the amount of energy dissipation or area in the loop decreases. And unloading stiffness with increasing plastic deformation. So in this model, the unloading and reloading stiffness, it is reduced from the initial values, accounting for the degradation, the hysteretic degradation. So this model accounts for the degradation, stiffness degradation. So you have to actually provide a stiffness degradation factor, and that will be used to actually modify the unloading and reloading stiffnesses. So here you can see that with a different stiffness modification factor, the unloading reloading lines are different, and here is with a different stiffness degradation factor. So in ETABS I will show you that if you select the degrading hysteresis model, it will ask you the degradation factor also additionally. The another one is Takeda hysteretic model, and it is suitable for reinforced concrete. So which means in fiber modeling approach, for unreinforced concrete fibers, we will not use this model. But for reinforced concrete beams, if you want to define the moment rotation behavior, the whole member level behavior of the RC, reinforced concrete beam, in that case, this Takeda model can be considered to be assigned to this action deformation curve. So less energy is dissipated than for the kinematic model, because the details of this model you can go for this paper, this reference, and this is a very famous model. You will find a lot of literature on Takeda model. It has a certain unloading, reloading rules which you have to actually understand if you want to use it. So here in this short amount of time, I will not explain into these detail, but this model also accounts for the stiffness degradation, but it has a certain unloading, reloading rules which are more suitable for reinforced concrete elements than for metals. So please check this reference if you want to actually see what are those unloading, reloading rules, how the stiffness is modified with each loop of the loading and unloading. But once you select this model, there is no additional parameter which you have to give. All the you can say loading unloading rules are already built in the Takeda model. Pivot model, it is similar to Takeda model, but there are some additional parameters which you have to define while defining this hysteretic behavior. Additionally, it has some pivot points which are used to control the shape of this hysteretic behavior. So you can play with these pivot points and the other parameters which are required, and then you can customize the unloading and reloading shape also. So it gives you uh, more, you can say, freedom for customizability. It is well suited for RC members, and obviously if you have the test results and you want to actually capture those test results using your computer model, then you can customize these pivot points to actually get the unloading and reloading shape which you want. More details can be seen in this particular reference. Obviously, if you select that in ETABS, there are a list of new parameters which you have to define. For example, these pivot points and some other parameters. Then you have concrete hysteresis model, which is intended for unreinforced concrete. So when we define the unreinforced concrete for our concrete fibers, most probably we give this kind of a hysteretic behavior to that. It is the default model for concrete and masonry materials. Tension and compression behavior are independent and behave differently. So the stiffness in the tension side and the compression side are different, unlike the other models which are there. And you also have to provide an energy degradation factor. 0.7, for example, in this case is provided. If you go for a higher number, then you are actually saying that the ratio of those areas of degraded and undegraded is that ratio is higher. So you have to actually have the cyclic test results in order to decide what degradation factor you have to give. Another one is BRB. This is not commonly used, and as the name indicates, this can only be used for buckling restraint braces. They have a very specific behavior, and that is that the strength increase with each cycle. They progressively grow in size, the loops, with each cycle. So this kind of a behavior, uh, just like BRBs, these are special kind of braces which are actually uh, they are specially designed to resist against buckling, because one of the major issues in steel buckling, steel braces, is that under compression load they buckle. For example, if I apply these two steel braces and apply lateral force, this brace which will be in compression may buckle. So in some cases you can specially design what we call as BRVs, in which we use for example hollow steel sections filled with concrete. So concrete takes the compression load and prevents the steel to buckle. So this is a special behavior. And then opposite of that behavior is the kinematic model, in which the backbone curve itself doesn't increase in strength, unlike the BRB model. Only the unloading and reverse loading increase. So this is an opposite of kinematic model. Uh, these were all the uniaxial cyclic behavior or hysteretic models which were available by default in ETABS. There is also a two-dimensional nonlinear concrete material model. And I will end this part of the lecture here. And this is only available for layered shell element. It is a two-dimensional because all of the stress strain models and behaviors which we have seen until now, they are unidirectional. But this is a two-dimensional nonlinear concrete material model, and it is based on this Darwin-Pecknold model with consideration of these VQ Collins behavior, and there is a technical note with ETABS about this particular stress strain behavior. This is only available for layered shell element and not for fibers. Basically, why it is called two-dimensional? Because here it represents the concrete compression, cracking and shear behavior under both monotonic and cyclic loading, and considers the stress strain components sigma 11, epsilon 11, 22 and 33 also. So it basically, if you have a particular material which is a flat, for example, area element, in both of the directions, the nonlinear stress strain behavior is considered. Currently in our fibers, they are running only along the length and they are uniaxial, like one steel bar or one column, hidden column of concrete, which is one fiber of concrete inside a cross section. So all of them, these fibers are uniaxial, but this is a two-dimensional stress strain model available for layered shell element. So you can check that technical note which comes with ETABS in order to get more detail about this two-dimensional nonlinear model. Currently, we will focus only on the linear, on the uniaxial or one-dimensional stress strain models.